Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brief presentation on Pride Month as Lesley University celebrates and commemorates June as Pride Month. My name is Kay Martinez. I am the Director of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Justice, or EDIJ Training, Education, and Development here at Lesley University. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I am queer, I am non binary, and I am Afro Latine. Pride Month celebrates identity, particularly highlighting gender, sexuality, and its intersections with many other aspects of our identity, like race, for example. When I say that I'm queer, that's in reference to my gender and sexuality. When I say that I'm non binary, that's in reference to my gender identity. And Afro Latine is a reference to my race and ethnicity. You'll notice that there's an E there. Some folks say Afro Latinx or use Afro Latinx or Afro Latine to be trans inclusive and to disrupt the gender binary because Spanish is a Romance language based in Latin, which uses gender for words. So some words like Latino, for example, will end in O, which tend to be in reference to men or masculine folks, or Latina, which is A, in reference to women or feminine folks. But for folks like myself, who are neither men or women, we want to be inclusive in language. So folks in the Spanish language are using Latine or Latinx to disrupt that gender binary. I am very fortunate and privileged to be able to be out uh, publicly and especially at work at Lesley University, where I am very out and proud, and I can do that because I am at an employer like Lesley that recognizes and celebrates gender identity and sexuality, and that I also live in Massachusetts, where we are one of a few states that you'll see represented on this map in red that have full LGBTQ non discrimination protections, which include references to gender identity and sexuality. So you see on this map here, there's different colors, and some states do not have LGBTQ discrimination protections at all. You'll see them in the gray. You'll see some states that have non discrimination laws, but they don't mention gender identity. And there are some states that have LGBT non-discrimination protections. So there's different levels to protection there on the basis of gender identity and sexuality or sexual orientation. I want to very briefly give an overview of this acronym, LGBTQ, which we will notice a lot, especially in reference to June, Pride Month. So you'll see LGBT or LGBTQ. We'll talk about some other acronyms that are out there in reference to this community. So I'm going to do a quick overview of what these letters mean. So we'll start with L, which stands for lesbian. Here are some photos of some folks who are very public about their lesbian identity. For example, Wanda Sykes, Megan Rapinoe, Lena Waithe, and Ellen DeGeneres, to name a few. The term lesbian encompasses many aspects, and here's a short list. So, lesbian can mean someone who is attracted to women. It is not limited to only women who are attracted to women, although that is, I would say, the popular usage of it, because there are non binary people, for example, who also identify as lesbians. So this term is growing in terms of who identifies as a lesbian. I would say that there is a traditional or dominant definition of lesbian, which says that it's women who are attracted to women, but that is changing. So now the G in LGBT. G stands for gay. Here's a few folks who are public about their gay identity, like Don Lemon, who's a journalist on CNN, Tim Cook, who's the CEO of Apple, and Cromwell Brown, who is, I would say, a media uh, personality. He's also on the show Queer Eye, which is on Netflix, but he's in many other things too. So, what does gay mean? Again, has many different uses. Gay can be used to refer to men who are attracted to other men, but there's a picture here of an umbrella because gay can also be used as an umbrella term in reference to anyone who is not heterosexual. So B in LGBT stands for bisexual. Some people pictured here who are out in regards to their bisexual identity include Representative Kristen Sinema, who's a Democrat in Arizona, and musician and artist Frank Ocean, who has a song about bisexuality called Chanel. So let's break down bisexuality. So there's a Latin prefix here, which is bi, which means two. And I would say there's a dominant definition of bisexuality or dominant understanding that bisexuality meant a person who was attracted to both men and women. And that is not the case. This definition is much more expansive than just that. Bisexuality means a lot of different things to different people, but a definition that I use and comes from the bisexual community is that it refers to being attracted to your own gender and the gender of others. So it's not just limited to two. So we've gone through LGB, and now for the T in this community, which refers to transgender. So this picture here of these blue, pink, and white stripes represents the transgender flag. Transgender also has a Latin prefix, which is trans, which means across in Latin. Here are some out transgender women who have shared their journey with us publicly and courageously, I would say. So here we have Caitlyn Jenner, who's on the cover of Vanity Fair, and Laverne Cox here, who was on the cover of Time magazine. So transgender can refer to folks who were assigned male at birth and have since transitioned to female. The folks photoed here are women, and they are trans women. Transgender also refers to transgender men. So these are folks who were assigned female at birth and have transitioned to male. Some folks featured here are well known in the masculine trans man community. They, for example, have been featured on magazines like FTM magazine, which stands for female to male. And here we have Lathe Ashley, who was featured on Attitude magazine. Now, we've covered LGBT, and there are a few other identities I wanted to mention. There are many others that I won't feature in this video, but I wanted to highlight non-binary. So I identify as a non-binary person. The gender binary, which we're referring to generally means men or women. And if you are someone like me who is beyond that, who identifies as neither of that, you are non-binary, which literally means that you're not binary. Some folks who are public have announced their non-binary identity recently. We have Sam Smith, who is an artist and a singer. Sam Smith uses they, them, theirs pronouns. India Moore is an actor featured in Pose, amongst other projects they have done, and India uses they, them, theirs pronouns. I just want to add also that although these two folks and myself use they, them pronouns, it doesn't mean that non-binary people can only use they, them pronouns. So all people can and should use whichever pronouns they'd like to. So I just don't want to represent that non-binary people only use they, them pronouns. There are non-binary people who use she, her, hers, they, them, he, him, a combination of both, or neo pronouns like ZZ, Zers, for example. So the Q, which is LGBTQ, stands for queer. I also identify as a queer person in reference to my gender and sexuality. So some dictionary definitions for the word queer literally mean strange or an anomaly. This word is a reclaimed pejorative. Pejorative means a slur or a derogatory term used to harm people. So this word has been used in negative and harmful and violent contexts. So if there was a person who was believed or suspected to be queer, they could be called queer, they could face bullying or harassment. I think this term, particularly amongst older generations, evokes some of those contexts where people were discriminated against and harassed and had this label hurled at them. And I've certainly noticed that other generations, particularly my generation, are using queer as a term that we're reclaiming. And we are proud of our queer identities. I certainly am. And so I think about this definition of being an anomaly, right? You are different. You are defying convention or the norms, which are generally heterosexual and or cisgendered. So queer is also an umbrella term, which is why we have an umbrella here, because folks who have a variety of identities can also identify as queer. For example, lesbian, gay, bi, or trans. So queer is not limited to just your gender or sexuality. Some folks also say it's a politic or a particular viewpoint. So I want to thank you all for tuning in to this first part of this series where we are breaking down Pride Month. Please stay tuned and check out the other videos where we get into what Pride Month is and some of the history and social justice behind Pride Month.